Hi, folks. Did you notice we have a new roll-in? And did you also notice that there's a new backdrop? It's still my living room, but Curtis, the guy who does the technical stuff for me, came down and we put up a whole bunch of new equipment. And the artist that he is, he said, we need a different angle. So at any rate, this is going to be what it's going to look like coming forward. So I want to make an announcement to you. This is not going to be the show that you expected. I was doing a 4-part series on the Tulsi Gabbard disclosures, but I decided that this show needed to be done now, and then we'll do part 3 on Friday, and we'll do part 4 next week. Why am I changing it? Because this story is unraveling, and I needed to bring this forward because it has some new and very important information in it. And then we'll go to the part 3 on Friday. So with that, let's bring up the first slide, and we will dig into this. So basically, this is called the Democrats' manufactured coup. Those responsible will be held accountable. The deep state is being exposed, and Trump is calling Obama out and calling him guilty of treason. And basically, he says he's the leader of the gang, and he's saying he tried to steal the 2016 election, and he's going to have to pay for it. So let's go to the next slide, and we will break this down a little further. No plans to make America better. Now, this is really sad, but we have a man who's been through hell in order to create a plan to make America better, to make it great, to make it better than it's ever been. And all he's getting is opposition. All he's getting is obstruction. So this is what the Democrats think of we, the American people. They don't want to give us our freedom. So Schumer boasts that the Democrats have what? Have appointed 235 liberal judges to obstruct Trump's what? Make America Great agenda. That's disgusting. And it really gives some credence to what's happening now with what Tulsi is exposing. The Democrats have listen to this, the Democrats have filed over 165 lawsuits to obstruct Trump. That's why, for example, he has said from the very beginning, we have it all. We have it all. We can prove that the 2016 election was stolen. Well, then why didn't he? You just read it, just saw it on this slide, because they obstructed him at every turn. He never got his day in court. If he did, this would have been put to bed years ago. But finally, he's going to get his day in court. And those that are responsible for stealing the election, and I might add multiple other elections around the world and here in America, are going to be held accountable. And maybe I'll make a comment here that's more my opinion than anything, but remember the auto pen that Biden used? Well, he used that auto pen to do what? Give immunity to those who colluded with him in order to create the Russiagate scandal. Well, he gave them immunity in civil court, but he did not give them immunity in what? A military court. So if this, as I believe it will, rises to the specter of treason, of basically stealing an election, of a coup, then this will not be heard in a civil court. This will be held in a military court. And for those of you who don't know, the penalty if you're found guilty in a military court is life in prison or hanging. So this is very, very serious, and the Democrats are scared to death, and they're lashing out and going to do everything they absolutely can in order to basically keep this story from coming out. So let's go to the next slide, and we'll break it down a little further. So this is what we're looking at. No one is above the law. The truth will finally prevail, and those who have committed this coup against us will see justice. I'm going to play this clip for you now, and then we'll dig deeper into this.
No one, especially the president, is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one 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 is above the law. Oh, son of a bitch.
Young man, there's no need to feel down. I said, young man, pick yourself off the ground. I said, young man, 'cause you're in a new town. There's no need to be unhappy. Young man, there's a place you can go. I said, young man, when you're short on your dough, you can stay there. And I'm sure you will find many ways to have a good time.
Hey, folks, I feel like I need to make a caveat after you've watched that. That was AI generated. Trump has not arrested Biden, or rather, I should say Obama. That was just showing his intent. And oh, by the way, if you go out and try to find that on your own, you'll never believe this. It's been scrubbed from the internet. But basically, I thought that was funny. You know why? Because those words, no one is above the law, no one is above the law, no one is above the law, that's going to be their fate. They are not above the law, and they are going to be found guilty of treason, and we are going to get our nation back. Any nation that doesn't have a fair election is not a sovereign nation. Any nation that doesn't control its money is not a sovereign nation. Any nation that does not have a closed border is not a sovereign nation. America is going to get all three of those things back, and we are going to be greater than we have ever been. We're going to have a financial restoration that'll blow your minds, and then we are going to do what we did when we first became the wealthiest nation in the world on our 110th anniversary. We are going to basically birth the greatest industrial revolution the world has ever seen, a technological revolution, and we're going to share that technology with the world, and everybody is going to benefit because America is going to fill its destiny. America was designed and intended by God to be that shining light on the hill that basically showed the way to the entire world, the way to freedom and prosperity, and the way to his throne room. So everything that we have waited for is about to happen. Let's go to the next slide and let's break this down a little further. What I'm trying to do here is to show you this is more than one scandal. And when we get into part 3, oh my goodness gracious, what you're going to see is absolutely amazing. You think this is big when we've got 2 scandals back to back? I'm going to show you in part 3 that there are at least 6 or 7 scandals that you should be looking at. But you know what? Most people have forgotten about them because this has been going on for years now. But I have a pretty good memory and I have a pretty good archive of information. So when we get to part 3, you're going to take a deep, deep dive and you're going to walk away understanding, oh my God, they did that to us and that to us and that to us and that to us. But anyway, for right now, let's just talk about the second scandal that's happening right now, and it's with Act Blue. And for those of you who don't know, Act Blue is a Democratic fundraising arm that, in my opinion, launders money. And what they are doing is unbelievable. So they've been caught with their hands in the cookie jar. And what it is they're using money from foreign companies, from foreign countries, but they're making it look like they're getting tons and tons and tons and tons of small donations from Democrats. But you know what they found out? They found out that when the individuals who were supposedly gave that money were asked, they say, no, I didn't give any money. So they take thousands and thousands and thousands of people and just use their name and say they made a donation. And all of a sudden they've got unbelievable amounts of money coming in that they use for all kinds of things. They use to pay people to do protests. They use to do anything you can think of that harms and endangers this nation and holds us in the chains of slavery that we're in. So if we'll go to this next video slide, you'll see exactly what it is that they're doing. Act Blue is accused of using money from foreign governments to affect the outcomes of elections. That is an act of what? It's an act of treason, and they're going to pay for it. So let's go to that clip, if you would, please.
an alleged straw donation scam. President Trump has ordered the DOJ to investigate Act Blue, which is Democrats' gigantic fundraising platform. Now, after widespread accusations of foreign funding flowing into U.S. elections and other suspicious contributions, now we're seeing a triple whammy, as the House Oversight, Judiciary, and Administration Committees are summoning contractors for Act Blue to testify before Congress on this matter.
No one is above the law, right? Wrong.
All right, folks. Now you see on your screen another slide, and this goes back. This is another scandal that I bet none of you even heard of. Absolutely never heard of it, because it goes back all the way to, well, actually the founding of our country, but where it really got its name is basically when we came out of World War II. So here's what's happened. We have a big picture. Order out of chaos is what they're doing. The sinister plot to enslave mankind. And here's what it's all about. Basically, when they left the theater of war in World War II, they said, we have to control the world. And here's how we're going to do it. We're going to leave behind soldiers all over the world. And we're going to use them to create terrorist acts, to create false flag attacks, to keep the people constantly butting heads with one another, to create war after war after war after war. And why do they want to do that? Because they wanted to maintain Western hegemony. They wanted to be able to control Africa and the Middle East and America and every nation in the world. And how they do that is by war. They drive you into war. They bankrupt you. They drive you into the central banking system. Then they take control of all the spheres of influence. And in Africa, for example, which is where we're going to start over here, what do? With all that chaos that they have? It's order out of chaos is the agenda. Basically, what are they doing? They're creating a situation where even though Africa got its freedom, I think it was in 1952, they've never really realized it until now. They're finally standing up and demanding to get their freedom. So what happened is they would have all these terrorist groups that would come in and cause chaos within all of Africa. And then what would happen is the people who funded them, the Western hegemony nations out of Europe, would get control of their infrastructure. They would get control of their minerals, and basically they would give virtually nothing to the African people, and they would be giving all of their valuable minerals away. Africa is ostensibly the wealthiest continent in the world. Finally, they've stood up. Finally, they said, we've had enough. Finally, they said, we will not sell you our minerals in raw state anymore. If you want to buy our minerals, you will buy them as finished products. We will be competitors. We are not going to, we will be consumers and competitors of the Western hegemony nations. And what else have they done? They said, you know what? We're going to do what America did. We're going to become the United States of Africa, and we're going to have the power that creates. And oh, by the way, that's exactly what Europe did after World War II, following the trend. And then what else did they say? They said they're going to break down all the borders so you can cross from one country in Africa to another just as easily as you cross from one state in the United States to another. And what else are they doing? They're recognizing that a financial shift is taking place, that the world is going to cryptocurrency and to electronics. And so what have they done? They have said, we are having our own sovereign currency. They've gotten together and they've pooled their gold and they've issued their own currency backed by gold and other commodities. And they're going to trade electronically. That is exactly what America does. That is exactly what Europe does. That is exactly what first world nations do. So Africa is breaking the chains of slavery. Here's yet another scandal that most of you have no idea of. It goes way back. It's called Operation Gladio. And what is Operation Gladio? It's nothing but the biggest covert operation the world has ever seen. I'm going to pick it up at the end of World War II, and the theaters of war are all shutting down, and the Western hegemony nations and the military industrial complex say, there's money to be made on the back end here. We can rebuild these nations and then we can control them. So what happens? They leave their theaters of war and they say, we're going to leave them behind. And they're going to be basically on the ground, boots on the ground, to do whatever we want them to do. Well, what do we want them to do? We want them to create chaos. We want them to bring these nations to their knees. So let's start with Africa. Africa has been held in slavery forever. They got their freedom ostensibly, I think it was in 1952, when Europe got together and said, okay, you can have your freedom, set up 54 nations, but they never really got their freedom, not their economic freedom, because here's what they did. They basically created a situation where they could hold those nations in poverty by denying them infrastructure and by forcing them to sell their valuable natural resources raw instead of being able to basically manufacture them into finished steel and finished gold and finished petroleum. So that's where the money's at. So now Africa is waking up. But what they do to them and what they're doing right now in the Congo, there is a genocide going on where there are millions of Congolese being killed. And let me use that as an example as to what they have done for decades in Africa. So Rwanda, which is a very small little nation right next to the Democratic Republic of Congo, has attacked. And they have this gigantic military force. Well, where did they get it? They got it from funding from, I don't want to find out if I want to say the nation, but let's say it was a colonial power in Europe. And the deal that they found out was that those people, when they got done with their little revolt, were supposed to have access to the gold and the oil and all the natural resources of Congo. But guess what? We found out that they didn't have any of those. They were coming from this coup that they were creating. So that's what they've done for decades. But Africa is waking up, and Africa within the next 20 years is going to be a first world nation. It's going to break the hold of the Western hegemony nations. And now let's go to 1953 and let's see what the source of the hatred in the Middle East was and where it came from. It all goes back to Operation Gladio. Basically, what happened is, what does this say in our Bible? Everything revolves around the Middle East, and everything revolves around what? Oil, the quintessential mineral in an industrial technological world. And so what happened, there was an oil company that was out of England that had sole rights to all of the oil in Iran. And they were paying the Iranian people 17% of the proceeds, and also cooking the books. So basically, we got a new leader, the democratically elected leader, who came in and said, enough of this, enough of this. I am getting back control. I am nationalizing all the oil. And that just couldn't be tolerated. So what happened is Eisenhower got involved, Europe got involved, and they just colluded and they said, well, we will step in and we will see to it that those oil fields are not nationalized. And they had a coup, and they put the Shah of Iran in, and he was nothing but the U.S. puppet. And then we're right back to the just where they were before, where the Iranian people were getting a pittance for the natural resources that they had. They were and oil are a very, very wealthy nation. So that led to the hatred that led to the coup that happened under Carter. And if you remember the movie Black Hawk Down, that's where they had all of the Americans from the embassy held hostage for, I believe it was over a year. Anyway, this is all the hatred that is created around the world from Operation Gladio. And then we go down to South America, and I'm sure you've seen Nicaragua and all the various claims of communism in South America, and all of the drug cartels. Literally, Latin America and South America are not sovereign nations. They are, in my opinion, literally controlled by drug cartels, which are controlled, and there's plenty of evidence to substantiate this, by the intel community of the Western hegemony nations. And that means the CIA here in America, that means MI6, and that means Mossad. So they are controlling Africa, Iran, South America, and literally every nation in the entire world. And now we go to 9/11 right here on U.S. soil. And for those of you who pay any attention, we now know, I think it's very, very clear to most people, that 9/11 was a terrorist attack. And the intention of that attack was to do what? Was to force America to go into a war that would profit the global financial elite, the hegemony nations. And Bush came out, and what did he do? He announced, we're going to war with Iraq, and it's going to be what? What's it going to be? It's going to be a generational war lasting 30 years or more. And that's exactly what it was. And that's exactly what Vietnam was. We had rules of engagement that kept us from winning that war. Then what happened when Donald Trump came in and he got involved in the Middle East? It wasn't any time at all until the caliphate was done, until basically they'd been wiped out, because he removed the rules of engagement and said, no, we're going to do what Sun Tzu says. You never go into a war and drag it out. If you're going to go into that war, you go in and you finish it and you leave. So that takes us, through Iraq. And then we go to where? We go to the Arab Spring. And oh my goodness, look at all those nations that were involved. The whole Middle East and all of North Africa were basically destabilized. Why? Two reasons. One, because they wanted to create a gold-backed system. And for those who've been following me know that pretty much anybody who tries to create a gold-backed system, either their nation is destroyed or their leaders are killed. That is until now, because now the global financial system, the fiat system, is collapsing in on itself. And so they're going to allow a gold-backed, commodity-backed system. But the reset that we're seeing right now is a struggle over, will it be controlled by the gangster banksters? Will it be controlled by the global financial elite? Or finally, will we get our freedom and get out from under the fiat system that has enslaved us, the system that drives us into debt with every single solitary dollar that's printed? It creates an additional debt. Until now, we're at $37 trillion in debt, and we're paying $1 trillion a year in interest. And so the system is collapsing, not just here in America, but around the world. And it all went hyper when we had COVID, and when every nation in the world basically was forced to print more money than they had printed in probably the last 100 years. And so that has brought the global financial fiat system to the point that it is all collapsing. And as it collapses, now they have to give us something that has value. So we're going to God's system. We're going to an economic system that cannot be manipulated and controlled the way a fiat system is, one that's based upon God's commodities, on gold, on silver, on agricultural byproducts, and on anything that you can imagine that has intrinsic use and value. So with that, let's go to the next slide, and we'll break this down a little bit further. So that was Operation Gladio, folks. And now we're going to go to the lie that's exposed here. They were trying to tell us, or we'll be telling us in a minute, that Russia has involved in themselves in our political arena, and that they basically saw to it that Donald Trump was elected. But look at what's on that screen. What's on that screen tells you a different story. It tells you that it was China that was guilty. It tells you that basically Meta was involved, and it tells you that basically China has been involved with our government. And so what we have to do is understand who the real enemy is. In this instance, it's not Russia. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Russia's our friend, but they don't have the resources to basically tamper in an election and successfully win it. Information is coming out that exposes that U.S. politicians, media outlets, and multiple nations did what? Conspired with China to steal the 2016 election. You don't see Russia anywhere in that story. Let's go on down to the next slide. And what we're going to see is that we have not had an honest election since basically McKinley was put in an election almost 100 years ago. So real quickly, the story is that McKinley was for big business. His opponent in the election, William Jennings Bryan, wanted to put the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, and the J.C. Morgans out of business. So they got together, used all their power and all their money, and got him elected. An aha moment have it. They found out that if we can get him elected, we can get Wilson elected, and we can get Roosevelt elected, and Johnson, we can get rid of Kennedy and put Johnson in, and we can get Kennedy, and we can get Bush, and we can get Obama, and we can get Carter, and we can basically put anybody into any office we want, and we can take control of the banking system, and we can take control of all the spheres of influence. So with that, let's go to the next slide. That's what's been happening, and we have not had a fair election for over 100 years. And in addition to that, there's been 71 other nations that there's evidence that their elections have been stolen. So now we're to the heart of this story, and this is why I put this presentation up here today, and I'm going to do part 3 on Friday. Here's what we're finding out. We're finding out that Hillary's basically responsible for starting this entire scandal, the scandal that led to everything that we're seeing disclosed by Tulsi Gabbard right now. I'm going to read these for you, and then I'll elaborate on them. Hillary manufactured Fusion GPS. That was the Russiagate scandal collusion, a plot to divert attention from what? From her email scandal. So what was going on back then? So she had, what was it, 32,000 emails that she had on a server in her home, and she used BleachBit to destroy them. And it just so happens, I can't hardly believe it, but it just so happens that there was a fire in her office. Now, none of the rest of the house was damaged, but she believes that those emails were destroyed and that she's safe. I think she's got some surprises coming because, according to Donald Trump, they quote unquote got it all. So what happened next? Trump wins in 2016 election, and Obama goes ballistic, and he says, we've got to get control of this. So what did they do? He called all of his minions in, all of his captains, or whatever you want to call them, and he said, we've got to create a story. We've got to tell the story, couching off of what Hillary had already started, of how and why Russia interfered in the election. But wait a minute. Let's go down to the next bullet point, and we've got a contradiction. Prior to Trump's win, the narrative was what? That Russia has neither the capacity nor the intent to interfere in the election. As we saw in a previous slide, who interfered? China. Who is interfering today? China. Who has bought most of our politicians? China. Who interferes in our corporations? China. Who forces companies, in order to do business in their country, to give them their intellectual product? China. Who has taken over manufacturing and become the world's #1 manufacturer, ceding there to the #2 position? China. So who's our enemy? China. Russia is a fraction of what it used to be. After 1989, when Russia fell and lost all of the satellite nations, Russia is no longer the nation it was. Look at how long it's taken us to win a war with Ukraine. And Russia is not our threat. That's not the nation that we have to worry about. Fact of the matter, with Hillary's health issues and the litany of scandals that she had, Russia would have vastly preferred that she win the election. They didn't have dirt on Trump. Trump had been a businessman all of his life. He was fresh into politics. But we have what? The Benghazi scandal. We have the email scandal. We have the Whitewater scandal. We have all kinds of stuff on Hillary. And if we have it, the Russians have it. They just wanted to set back, and everybody thought that there was a wire that Hillary was going to get elected. And when she got elected, they would be what? They would be in a position to blackmail her, to puppet her, to use her. If they wanted to influence the election, they would have done it before. So they just stepped back and they just let it happen. And they thought, like everybody else, it's wired for Hillary Clinton. Well, in this particular instance, the voice of the American people was so overwhelming that they couldn't rig the election, and everybody was flabbergasted when Trump won. Let's go to the next slide, and we'll see that's Act 1. Now we're going to go to Act 2. So Act 1 was the 2016 election and the theft of it, and Act 2 basically leads us into the 2020 election. So 2019, that's when they started with this. And what happened in 2019? Something called COVID. And what did COVID do? COVID shut down the entire world. And did that have an effect on the election? You bet your bippy it did. Basically, all of a sudden, we're locked in our houses and they're saying, oh, we got an election coming up. We've got to have mail-in ballots. And then that allowed them to do what? Ballot harvesting. And then they had all kinds of changes to the voting rules. And when we got to counting our votes, guess what happened? It used to be that we counted the votes and got the winner of the election on the very day. Well, they drug it out for, what was it, a couple of weeks? And we had photographs of people taking boxes out from under tables and scanning ballots that had already been counted before. There was all kinds of hanky-panky. But Trump never got to court. He said, we have it all. And he did. It was right there before the eyes of the American people. But he never got his day in court, never. And let's go on down, and we see that Hunter Biden steps into the picture, and he's involved in a scandal in Ukraine with Burisma. For those who don't know, the federal government was busy doing money laundering and busy developing drugs in Ukraine, and Ukraine was the center for a lot of illegal activity with the Central Intelligence Agencies of the United States of America. And so Hunter was on the board of Burisma. And what happened? Let's go down to the next bullet point. Joe Biden is informed that his son, Hunter, is being investigated for hanky-panky with Burisma. And good old Joe just steps right up, and he says to the prosecutor who's looking to prosecute his son, you back off that case or I'll freeze $1 billion in aid. And so they backed off, and he said, look at that. What do you know? And then what happened? They pressured even further, and they got the prosecutor fired. I mean, if that isn't political malfeasance, I don't know what is. And then what happened next? Biden wins election, but that's the 2020 election now. But there was a problem. The American people knew in their hearts that election was stolen. And they needed something to shut them down, shut them up, and more importantly, to see to it, hopefully, that Trump could not run in the next presidential election. So we're about to find out the involvement of Nancy Pelosi and others in the Democratic Party in the insurrection of January 6th. We're about to find out that was another lie. We're about to find out that Washington is not a state, Washington, D.C., that therefore Trump cannot call out the National Guard to have boots on the ground in Washington, D.C. on the day of January the 6th. He made a speech, and I watched it several times. He never called for any insurrection. He says, march to the White House and have a peaceful protest. He had asked for the National Guard to be called out, and who said no? Nancy Pelosi. So Nancy is going to be the one that we find out was really responsible and behind, and Schumer and all of the other people that basically got involved in the January 6th insurrection charges against Trump. That's all coming out, folks. Every bit of this coming out. It's scandal after scandal after scandal. And we have waited 4 years. God ordained everything that's happening right now. Kim Clement said that Donald Trump would be president of the United States, not once, but twice. But he also said, here's what's going to happen. There's going to be an interruption between his presidency. It had to be, people. It was ordained by God. We have been so controlled, so manipulated, so brainwashed that we had to have that 4 years to drip, drip, drip the truth, or otherwise we were going to tear America apart. Imagine if 4 years ago we had gone around and started arresting presidents that preceded Donald Trump. I mean, the Democrats would have staged mass demonstrations, mass riots in every city in the country, and we would have literally had a civil war. But now, with the drip, drip, drip that's happened, and with the mountain of information that's coming out, I believe we're at the point that we can actually arrest Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and George Soros and who knows how many others, and Schumer and on, and Nancy, and on it goes. And the American people will say, okay, we get it. We understand. We see what they did. We see that they stole multiple elections. We see that they have controlled our financial system. We see that they have inflicted us with 10 to 20 million illegal immigrants. And then they refuse to even let us take the terrorists out of the country. We see that they are our enemies. And we have enough people, I believe now, that we can actually take action and see to it that these people are held accountable for what they've done without tearing the nation apart. So I believe we're going to have a relatively peaceful transition. Now, we may have to have martial law for a short period of time. We may have to have lockdowns. And trust me, these people are not going to give up power easily. So I think I'm going to be doing a show in a couple of weeks that's going to talk what happens when we make this transition, when we arrest these people, when the financial system comes down. It's going to be just like God said, everything that can shake will shake. We are going to have turmoil, but it's not going to be like what's happened in the past in the orchestrated financial collapses that happened in 29 that took 12 years to get us back to where we were when the stock market collapsed in 29. It's not going to be like in 08 when it took 10 years to have a recovery. This is going to be a steep decline. We're going to have a massive stock market crash, but it's going to come right back because what's happening in the background, we've already set things in motion to switch over from the fiat system over into the new system that is what going to be run by quantum computing, by artificial intelligence, by cryptocurrency, by XRP, by XLM, that is going to give us control that we've never had before. And we're going to have a commodity that cannot be manipulated and controlled the way the fiat system can be controlled. You're not going to be able to cause inflation or deflation or stagflation or wage suppression or stock market collapse. This is going to be their last hurrah, and we're going to come out of this like a rocket shooting to the moon. And basically, we're going to have a financial recovery. And once we understand this, folks, we, America, if Donald Trump had not gotten in this time in 2024, we were so close to a catastrophic financial collapse that America would have been nothing more than a third world country. But look at what he did in his first term. He brought the stock market back from 10,000 to 30,000. He negotiated all kinds of trade deals, and he had the greatest economic recovery the world has ever seen, all in the face of absolute opposition. Well, now he's been in politics. He knows the landscape, and he has a plan that is absolutely detailed, and we're going to have an unbelievable financial recovery. Let's go to the next slide. This is Act 3. Justice is served. The 2025, here he is. He's in office, and this is what's happening. Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, brings criminal referral against who? Hillary and Obama and all their co-conspirators. And Trump comes out and says, there will be justice. And Tulsi says, there will be justice. So I think we can see, and I believe that these people are going to pay for their crimes. And 4 years of doing nothing, Democrats have what? Oh, we got some more distraction coming up. They're now raising the Epstein scandal, and they're trying to say that Trump's name is in this and in that, and all they've got is guilt by association. Well, let me tell you, part of the reason why Trump is the man he is the president that he is the leader that he is because he rubbed elbows in New York with criminals, with politicians, with people who play dirty every day of the week. And who knows, there's a lot of narcissistic people who on the surface seem very nice. But Trump, if you really look at it, has not had a relationship with Epstein for years and years. So let's go on down and break this down, and we'll get this over with. Despite the fact that Trump never got his day in court, they're trying to come back with this ridiculous Epstein story and say that they're not guilty of insurrection. They're not guilty of treason. They're not guilty of perpetuating a coup. But they are, and we're going to see that they are, and it's all going to be proven because Tulsi says that this has risen to the level of treason, of insurrection, and of coup. And when we have that level then we can't look the other way. This has to be done, or else we have no nation. The final point on this slide, Democrats falsified what, in order to get all of this done, where all this started, now we're going back to the very beginning, they did what? They basically spied on a sitting president. How did they do it? They falsified a FISA resort, a FISA, what's the word I'm looking for? Can't remember the name of it. Anyway, they falsified a FISA document that got the court to say that, yes, you can spy on Donald Trump, a sitting president, and they created a national security crisis by opening our borders to millions and millions of illegal immigrants. So that's the chaos that has been brought on us by the Democratic Party, by the global financial elite. And I need to point something out here. If you really understand what's been happening, he who controls money controls the world. And with that money, they can buy power and influence at every sphere of influence that there possibly is. So we haven't had an honest government for decades, almost since the inception of this nation. Let's go on to the next slide. We're almost done. So basically, this is what's going to happen. 2025, no one is above the law. So this is where we started. They were saying in that little film, no one's above the law, no one's above the law, no one's above the law. That's true. And that's what's going to happen. Justice is going to be served. Sovereignty is going to be restored, and those who are guilty of insurrection, not Donald Trump, those who are guilty of a coup, not Donald Trump, those who are guilty of suppressing the American people and holding them in literal slavery will be held accountable. And their names are Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and all of their inner circle. Let's go to the next slide, if we would. And this is where I need to ask you to help me. We're at a point now where this whole thing is about to come to a head like a pimple popping, and we are going to go into that period where the American people are going to get their nation back one way or the other, and it's going to get dicey. I'm not asking you to go join the military. I'm simply asking you to do what our republic calls for you to do, to stand up and be part of bringing this nation back to where it needs to be. Our republic is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And to be a citizen of the republic, you have to be educated, you have to be informed, you have to be willing to vote, you have to be willing to vote your conscience, you have to vote for what's in the best interest of the nation, not what is in the best interest of putting money in your pocket. So this book was ordained by God. I've been on this journey since 1968, and now is the time when you need to know the truth. Our true history is in this book. God ordained it. He told me that I have to base this book on history. I have to base it on the Bible. I have to base it on current events, and I have to give the people a set of directions so that they can stand up and be part of restoring America to greatness. What this book will teach you is what made America great, God's ordained nation, how we lost it, how we are getting it back, and how once we get it back, how we keep it. So if you've not bought this book, please do so. Please read it as quickly as you can. And after you've read it, don't put it on a dusty shelf. Give it to somebody. Ideally, give it to a Democrat. Let them read the truth and see if that doesn't maybe open their eyes. So we're on a journey to have our eyes open, folks, and we're on a journey to basically get our freedom back. So with that, we'll see you on Friday, and we'll do part 3 of this series on this scandal. Thank you very much.